Keanu and Jimmy are both kind of going back and forth and don't seem to get along with each other, as Keanu pitched Jimmy as a potential replacement nominee to Vince. This is funny because Vince is obviously close with Jimmy. Keanu doesn't know this, and this is going to be a trend for Keanu throughout last night, because not only does he do this, but he also talks to Rachel for at least a solid hour, I believe, in the HOH room with Vince there as well, trying to convince Rachel that keeping Kelly, if she goes up as a replacement nominee, would be better for her game than keeping Amy. And that is just silly. So basically, Keanu right now is painting himself as a target and also as a potential replacement nominee option, just simply because he talks so much and he really doesn't grasp the house dynamics, pitching kind of somebody's number one ally to go home to both Rachel and I would say Vince as well. I would say Jimmy as of now. I mean, you could make the argument for Kelly, but I think Kelly is just gone. She's dead. Who cares about Kelly? But I think as far as active gamers, Jimmy is probably one of Vince's top allies, and you have pitched now both of them, Rachel to vote out Amy, Jimmy for Vince to put up. It's just not a good look. And Keanu, just as likely, could be going on the block instead of Kelly. And I would not be surprised by this. And I think if Keanu does go on the block, there could be a motion where he ends up going home. And I think that the people will have the votes. It's going to be tight between him and Zay if they're both on the block. But if it's between him and Amy, I think it's pretty clean cut that Keanu goes home. So last night may have been real detrimental to his game, as he might be a replacement nominee. But I don't think Vince has the balls to kind of go out there and make this kind of move, especially this early in the game. But you don't have any allegiance to Keanu. You haven't made him any promises, at least that I've seen. So I don't see why you wouldn't just go out there, make this nomination, make this move. Coming in at number 15 and dropping 9 spots, we have Keanu. Now, Keanu has been a real active player, but mostly to his detriment. We've seen on the episodes that him and Rachel have, had a real big emotional moment between the two of them, but him and Rachel have been mostly beefing, and on the live feeds, they do not get along. And with Jimmy and Keanu having that most recent blow up, I do think Keanu is going to be a likely target. He also, I was watching the live feeds last night, he also went up to Jimmy in the HOH room and lied to him about keeping Zay. If Jimmy talks to everybody in the house, I think it's going to become quite obvious that Keanu did not do that, and he is lying to Jimmy again. And he's gonna need to win a veto or a BB blockbuster to get himself off of that block. These last couple of competitions, as we see with Zay not winning either one of them, are pretty equitable competitions. So Keanu's not a shoo-in to win a veto or a Big Brother blockbuster just because he is a huge, massive man. You know what I'm saying? He could be the next person going home. I think at the very least, he's the next person on the block. It was Keanu, Kelly, and Mickey who end up winning powers. And this was a fun trio of players to end up winning the powers. Keanu, of course, being mostly a house pariah at this point. Let's break down these powers one by one. Starting off with Keanu. Keanu wins basically a secret house guest veto twist. It doubles his chances of winning the veto, and he gets to bring back a former house guest who will compete in the veto competition essentially for Keanu to double his chances of winning the power of veto. And he is on the block this week, so he more than likely will be unleashing this power into the house. It is going to be interesting to see who Big Brother will be bringing back to compete for Keanu. He mentioned in his confessional when he talked about having the power, players like Casey, Michael from Big Brother 24, and Cody. If I had to guess who it's going to be, though, I have a feeling it's going to be Jag. I think it's going to be Jag here. Next two that are stocked down are kind of a package deal. Obviously, it's Keanu and Kelly. They tell each other everything, and they're a really tight-knit duo at this point. They might be the worst duo of all time because they're two of the worst players that I have ever seen. They are very bad at the game of Big Brother. If Keanu doesn't go home, I think it's going to be Kelly, but it does put Jimmy here in an interesting situation because he does have these powers at play, and he did talk about how he wants to flush them. He's doing a good job of that. He put 2 of the 3 up that have the power. Little does he know one of his main allies has that third power. If Keanu finds a way to get himself off the block with those 2 chances, and Kelly gets a third chance and wins that veto, then both of them stay in the game after those 2 powers are used, and then we're really in a weird, crazy situation where Adrian's on the block, Keanu and Kelly both take themselves off. They could be in a real powerful position position. But I don't believe that that is going to happen. My stock is still down for them. This is all in terms of winning the game. I still don't think they have a chance to win the game. I don't know if it's going to be Keanu and Kelly on the block come eviction night, but it is going to be a mess and very crazy if Keanu is able to win the veto and if Kelly is also able to win that second veto to see what Jimmy wants to do. Not only did Jimmy have to put up a tying record setting 5 people on the block, but the 2 nominees weren't even people that were originally on his radar. It was Keanu and Kelly and Adrian, the 3 original nominees for the week, and I think anybody with any common sense could have seen those nominations coming from a mile away. He wanted to get Keanu out of the house. Keanu, as of right now, is the consensus house target, and the one-sided beef between Jimmy and Keanu. Keanu actually tries to get closer to Jimmy throughout the week, but Jimmy is just not having any of it. By the week's end, Keanu is trying to spread misinformation about Jimmy to the likes of Rachel. He also feels as though Keanu has a power this week because Kelly comes up to Jimmy and actually tells him that she has a power. And she said that the only other person that I told was Keanu, and that made Jimmy suspicious. And he's like, okay, well then Keanu must also have a power. And Jimmy's whole intention this week is to go out and flush these powers. And at number 15, going up no spots, we have Keanu. Keanu had a real interesting week this week. He reveals that he has the power, and he has this back and forth with Jimmy. And in this back and forth with Jimmy, he goes off and goes on to say that he is going to pick off everybody one by one. And this is something that particularly rubbed somebody like Ashley the wrong way. They had quite the back and forth after this. Keanu is just not that good. He has like good ideas in theory that he's trying to do, but he's just doing it with the wrong people and doing it to the wrong people. For example, I mean, trying to pitch Rachel. I think he should be getting into other people's ears for next week about targeting Rachel down the line. Trying to get into Jimmy's ear right now, who is really tight with Rachel, as you know. To put her up as a replacement nominee for this week, it is just not going to work, man. You gotta start planting seeds for long-term goals moving forward. We spoke. Lauren had put up Keanu, Kelly, and Will on the block. Keanu takes himself off the block. Keanu, though one of the biggest social pariahs that Big Brother has ever seen, Keanu has zero idea. Keanu thinks that he has everything on lock, and throughout the whole week on the feeds said, I may be an idiot, but this is what I know and this is what I think. Throughout the whole week, Rachel was telling him that Vinny was running the game, and he was like, I don't believe that to be true. He was calling Rachel a floater and thought that Jimmy was the swing vote that he could get onto his side to keep Adrian later in the week. Just the grasp that he has on this game is not there. But the fact that he keeps winning competitions and keeps sticking around is very fun. I don't ever want him to leave because I think he is one of the more interesting house guests that we've ever gotten on the show. But him winning the veto causes a real interesting couple of days within that Big Brother house because this tears Lauren to shreds because she does not want to name a replacement nominee. And next up, we have Keanu. What can be said about Keanu that hasn't been said a million times, man? This guy has terrible reads on the house. If he is on the block, he is going to always be an option to go home. Keanu is going to have to end up fighting for his life again. Keanu is still a house pariah, still playing the game very bad. Ava wanted her friend to stay, and all she said was, you don't want to be associated with Keanu, do you? And these guys were like, oh, no. I don't think I've seen anybody except for maybe Cameron from Big Brother 25 really hurt his value, like his positioning so bad to where people will do stuff that is not the best move for their game just because they don't want to be associated with that person. It is really impressive how bad of a player Keanu has been and how much of a pariah he has been in this house. The show is kind of giving you the edit. Vince is the one that's pulling the strings and is the one that's playing the most competent game. He's much like everybody else. He's not playing that great of a game. He wasn't the one that really persuaded Mickey to not go after him. This was all her doing and all in her own head. And a little bit of Keanu, which Keanu winning vetoes has been the only thing that has kept this season interesting. These head of households are forced to show their cards a little bit. Keanu, after winning this veto, was very funny because after he wins, he does one of his iconic moments where he tells Ava, I think you have a prompt and Ava blew up saying, "What the heck, dude? Or is it because I dress like this?" And that was crazy. She did have a prompt, like to not say congratulations, you've won the power of veto right after somebody's won the veto is something that I have never seen. Keanu, yeah, is a house pariah. No one likes him, but I don't think he is even close to being the biggest house pariah that I have ever seen. And I think even when like Evil Dick was winning power of vetoes, when Janelle was winning power of vetoes, whoever was hosting them would still say, "Congratulations, you've won the power of veto," would put it around their neck. And Ava, when she was supposed to say the words and hand him the veto, just stood there looking like she just sucked on a lemon. And when she said, "Is it because I dress like this?" I thought that was annoying. Like when you make that so much of your identity that you think people are just picking on you because of the way that you dress, it's like you're almost going out of your way to dress like that just to get a reaction. And nobody's even considered backdooring Keanu. The fact that everybody's given him 2 shots to protect himself and he has won the veto 3 times in a row, it's kind of mind-blowing to me. Mickey even came up to him this week and said, "Would you rather be backdoored or put on the block straight up?" And can't believe that happened either. Coming in at number 12, I have Keanu. He will be on the block yet again this week. If he does not win the veto or a blockbuster and finds himself on the block come eviction night up against Vince, I think Keanu is potentially the only player on the board that Vince could stay against, just because Keanu has rubbed so many people the wrong way. He's won so many competitions, and he's somebody that I think Vince can actively campaign against and say, "Hey, Keanu's not good for your game." Keanu has given me a lot of confidence that he could go out and he could win competitions. I do think that if Keanu's on the block, Keanu will go home, but I'm pretty confident in his ability to win competition. Starting to rebound, coming in at number 7, going up 5 spots, we have Keanu. Keanu doesn't know how to read the game at all, but god dang it, is he not fun to watch. He loves to have his rose-colored glasses on. He loves to have his blinders on. Rachel tries her best to tell him what's going on in the game, but he refuses to believe her, and he thinks that he has everything figured out. I just don't see a world where he wins, but it is going to be fun this week where he's probably not even going to be considered to be put on the block. Keanu, like, again, I mentioned Taryn from Rob Has a Podcast a lot. He is a guy who is supposed to be a week 1 boot, and he is still hanging around, and it is so interesting to watch that kind of player stick around for this long. He's great at these competitions, even though his reads are so bad. I think people do like Keanu. I think Vince, for what it's worth, does like him. I think Kelly has a great relationship with him. Riley and Catherine, I think, are off and on with Keanu as far as how they feel about him. Rachel and him have one of the more notorious love-hate relationships in the house. Keanu is going to survive this week. I still think he would be a target if anybody like Lauren wins ahead of household, or if Mickey wins ahead of household again, or if Morgan wins ahead of household. I think she would target him. That's the problem with the Morgan, Vince, Mickey, Lauren. Even though they want to pretend like they're playing this good game, they want to talk about Final 2 and jury all the time, they will not target the side that is directly coming after them. Instead, they will target people who actually want to work with them, and they will try to get rid of people that are in the middle. They want to keep both sides happy. You can't play Switzerland for this long. You can't just get down to the final 8 and have 4 people on each side and have 4-on-4 duel. That's not how this works. Keanu, after being targeted for so long, he wins the blockbuster, comes out on top after a whole Thursday live feed where he was discussing if he should throw it or not. I do think if certain people win head of household, he could be the target, but as of right now, I think he's safe. Coming in at number 7, and the only other player in this tier going up no spots or down any spots, I don't think it's any surprise, we have Keanu, somebody who is supposed to be a week 1 boot, who is still hanging around. I love Keanu. I love him dearly. He's somebody who I enjoy because even though he was blindsided, he knows it's a game and he took it on the chin and he was fine. I do think there's just still too many people in the game who are going to be actively targeting him, and there's going to be too many people in the game right now that I don't think would respect his game or that would give him their vote come the end of the game. I really don't think Mickey would. I don't think Morgan would. I don't think Ava would either, and it's a toss-up for Ashley as well. I don't think would give him her vote. And Rachel, it depends on who's at the end. Rachel and him have a very off and on again relationship. But the fact that Keanu has been able to have that relationship with Rachel, where Rachel is somebody with great reads in the game and somebody that can tell him what's going on, and Keanu's, like, no, just somebody who has his blinders on all the time, somebody who has all-time bad reads. I don't see a world where people are going to look at Keanu's game, which has been him constantly having the wrong idea about what's going on in the house and him needing blockbusters and vetoes to save himself. I just think he's made too many enemies up until this point, and even if he does continue this blockbuster and this veto streak, I just don't see a world where people are going to want to vote for him unless he is in the end with some of the people that we named earlier. Keanu tries to go up to Vince and have some influence on his head of household and try to throw out some pitches on what he would do if he was HOH and what his nominations would be. And again, this is a time where Keanu has said something, and I kind of think it wasn't that bad of an idea. He said, I think you should nominate Mickey, Ashley, and Rachel, so then that way none of them can use the veto on each other. And although this is a very solid pitch, Vince knows that he's in the Judges Alliance, and if he puts all three of them up, oh man, they're just not going to like me anymore. They're not going to be my friend. Big Brother 27 will not be complete until Keanu and Kelly are in those final two chairs. I could not think of a better representation than to have the two players that should have been the first and second boot end up being the final two, where a whole bitter jury has to pick between their two least favorite people as they find a way to comp their way to the end. And why not? Coming in at number 6, going up one spot, we have a running mate, Keanu. There was a point where I was thinking, like, if Keanu comped his way to the end, I think there's a chance that he could win. But I think with just how bad his reads are and how he talks to people, I don't find it likely that there is a final two scenario where he wins. I think Keanu, if I was him, I would try to keep Vince off the block and maybe just try to pretend like you trust him again, because Vince is somebody that you ultimately beat at the end. I really do, because I think Vince has burned so many people at this point, and that might be the only person you beat outside of Kelly, and that could be his main objective, is to go to the end with Kelly, which would be awesome. That's what I'm pulling for. I'm pulling for the ultimate slop of this season. Keanu doesn't have a whole lot of winning scenarios. I think he'll strengthen the relationship with Rachel by not putting her up. These players, the more that they strengthen their relationship with Rachel by not putting her up, the longer Rachel stays in this game and the more win equity she compiles and she builds, and it's getting bad. But you know what? Doesn't matter. Rachel Riley's playing a great game. We'll get into that a little bit later. Keanu, I think, needs to start looking at a bigger picture here. He hasn't done that all season. Now, of course, we knew from the live feeds that Keanu was the new head of household, and they showed it in this episode. And, Will said it best. The judges suck at these competitions, and it just gives me more of a reason to believe that Keanu and Kelly are going to be in the final two. It gives me more confidence that that's something that could actually happen, because nobody in the judges can win a competition, whether it be physical or mental. I mean, you had Keanu and Kelly in the final two of a mental competition, and like 4 of you or 5 of you all dropped out at the same exact question. It was a tough and an embarrassing thing to see. She was pissed off at Keanu. There was like no shot that she was going to be working with him. And then he ends up winning head of household. And then she ends up coming to him and says, okay, fine. You know what? I'll work with you. And Keanu bought into that hook, line, and sinker and said, you know what? Yes, I want to work with you. I'm going to keep you safe. The frenemies for frickin' life. I would say that's more about how dumb Keanu is, more so than how smart Rachel is, because Rachel right now with Keanu is biting her tongue. She's not really excited to work with Keanu. Keanu has no idea about this. He thinks that he is some sort of mastermind. And, I don't think I ever mentioned it out loud, but Keanu puts up Vince, Morgan, and Mickey, and his target, at least at the end of Sunday's episode, was going to be Morgan. Keanu went on to win the Battle of the Block as expected. And, I mean, this battle of the block, it was just so catered to Keanu. Like, I think Ashley at the end came close to competing with Keanu. I think she was tailing him there at the very end. Keanu was hauling ass through this thing. This was the quickest he has ever gone about a blockbuster competition. Notoriously, he is somebody that has a very slow approach. He is somebody that takes his time. But this time around, he was hauling ass to get all these ropes untied. He had done all the ropes and he was untied and he was walking towards his pedestal. And by the time he was walking towards his pedestal, I believe Ashley was untied as well and she was running, but that did not affect Keanu. He stayed cool and calm in the moment, walked to his button and pressed it and beat Ashley and Will. But as far as Keanu's overall game goes, it's really frustrating to see him try so hard time and time again and no one throws him a bone. Like, I mean, honestly, I understand that it's because he is such a threat and he is such a competition beast that people don't want to keep him in the game. But there are some things that he pitches that it's just like, this would, technically probably be better for your game. People don't understand how bad Vince is for their game and how little Vince actually cares about him. Keanu pitching to get Vinny on the block was actually a 1000 IQ play. If I was Lauren, I would have done that. Vince has screwed you over time and time again, and you have to see that at some point. Like, I don't know how he's misted all these house guests so hard from being such a weasel. You would think that his mist would be pretty chunky and filled with rocks and dirt. And I have Keanu a little bit higher, or one spot higher than Ava, strictly because I think he is more prone to winning a competition. Keanu, something you got to give him credit for is that he got to stay against Kelly. He's now not only won competitions to save himself, but he's also survived a vote. And, that's something that I never thought Keanu would have been able to do. And he does survive a vote here. And, Kelly may have been the only person that he would have survived a vote against, but that is something to add to his resume. When he was a guy, would have never really been in that situation and really should not have ever been in that situation. I can't believe that they would ever want to send Kelly home, especially over Keanu. Kelly's going to be an easy beat at the end. Morgan is very concerned that she is going to become the next biggest target after Keanu leaves. But we're getting so late into the game, and if there's one person that can hang around, beat you in these competitions, it's probably Keanu. I just think Keanu might have somewhat of a decent story at the end to get some people to vote for him there, and I think taking the shot at him makes more sense than eliminating Kelly, who is somebody that, everybody almost certainly beats at the end. Starting things off at number 5, who I think has one winning scenario, and it is against Ava. That person is Keanu, and that sucks. I do think Keanu, for what it's worth, has a great story, and he has the comp wins to back it up. But, I mean, he lost this HOH here. It does, come down to veto competitions, which he is very good at winning. He doesn't necessarily need to win HOHs in this spot. I mean, he's going to be nominated almost certainly, guaranteed. And it's funny how delusional he is, because he said on the feeds last night that he thinks that he didn't need to win this HOH because he doesn't think that he's going to be up on the block. And that is something that is just absolutely not true. Keanu will definitely be on the block. He's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but he's also made a lot of friends, and he does have an amazing story. Let's start things off with where this week pretty much started, and that's with Keanu getting eliminated from the house. Keanu has nobody else to blame but himself, right? He took his eye off the prize in this competition, and while being distracted, he lost the competition. And it's a damn shame, because if Keanu wins this competition, this HOH, production really wanted this man to win the game, I think, because these endgame comps were pretty much made for him. He's got to feel pretty dumb for getting lazy with this HOH competition, the one that Rachel told him was the most important to win, because he probably could have won out. If he wins out, he probably takes Morgan out. And Keanu is probably your winner of Big Brother 27. But just like his whole arc all season long, Keanu screws Keanu. Keanu messes things up, even though he had things pretty much handed to him on a silver platter. Keanu, though, was a fun character. I mean, he did have a fun dynamic with the likes of Rachel. He was an interesting science experiment almost, right? He was a guy who was supposed to be a first boot, but ended up making it all the way to the final 5. His reads were bad, but he ended up surviving. He even survived a vote, Keanu did, against the other person who was a part of this science experiment by Big Brother to see what happens when a night 1 and a night 2 boot, or I should say week 1, week 2 boot, survived this long with Kelly. And it was interesting and it was fun. You talk about like DVD covers with seasons of Survivor and even seasons of Big Brother. Keanu definitely makes the cover here. But this isn't going to be the last that we see of Keanu. I almost guarantee you that this man will be on the challenge. So keep an eye out for Keanu on the challenge. That's probably where he's going to shine. Coming in at number 6, I have Keanu. Keanu is somebody who, at the beginning of his interview, I was like, this guy's a recruit. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. This guy seems like Cam from last season, yada, yada, yada. But then he brings up like a Big Brother 6 moment. I'm like, okay, well, you know, maybe this guy is a fan. And then he started talking about how he wants to connect with people like Enzo, but Enzo didn't use his social capital to gain enough win equity to go to the end and win the game. And then I'm like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. This guy knows what he wants to do. Kept talking about how he has the charisma to gather people around him and have enough friends to insulate himself. And then I just kind of came around to it. I was like, Keanu is somebody who could win the game if he plays the game that he's talking about here, because if he plays like Enzo and has the social capital to win, and he's huge, he's built, he could definitely win competitions. If this is how he's going to want to come in and play, Keanu's a dark horse and is somebody that could potentially win the game. Coming in at number 7, and I'll say my number 6 as well, because I kind of view their games the same. Number 7, I have Mickey going down 2 spots, and number 6, Lauren going up 6. Starting off with Mickey. Mickey is in a good spot. She's close with Jimmy and Morgan, and I think is somebody who does fade into the background oftentimes, but that's better than playing something like Jimmy's game. There's not a whole lot to say about her game as of right now. She has good connections, one-on-one connections with a lot of people in the house, and I think as the numbers thin, you're going to really see Mickey has, not touched a block. She has good relationships with just about everybody. She's a real threat in this thing. She's not that exciting right now, but again, as somebody whose stock is constantly rising. And then Mickey wins the secret head of household, and this one is a fun one, man. This is almost kind of like an invisible head of household. Basically, what Mickey can do is she can overthrow the HOH, but whoever the current HOH is gets to interrogate everybody in the house, and if they can predict who the person was that overthrew them, then they get to keep their head of household, and Mickey gets outed to the entire house. This is a fun power and a fun thing that Big Brother thought up here with this secret head of household. I'm a fan of this power, and I'm a fan of Mickey having it, because I think Mickey is sly enough that people would not predict that it's her. I don't know when she would use this. I think it will have to be pretty later on, because she is pretty well connected at this point, so we might not even get to see it, which will be kind of a downer, but we'll see what kind of tricks Mickey has up her sleeve. She ends up telling Morgan. That's good for Morgan's game. Zach is kind of keen on the idea that she might have a power because he was in the area of Mickey when she won that secret power. I think he's the only one outside of Morgan that have an idea that she might have a power. Morgan's the only one that knows for sure. As far as stock up this week, I only have 2 players in that tier, which are Mickey and Morgan. Mickey this week with the power, I think, kind of solidifies her position in the game as one of the more under the radar dominant women players. I really like the position that Morgan and Mickey are in, and could even inch them into my top 5 at the end of this week if everything goes well. They're definitely safe with Jimmy, that's 100% sure, so they will definitely be here another week. I just think that the whole theory of flushing the power during your HOH is just a tad bit silly, because it is always going to come back and backfire on you, and we saw it this week. Jimmy had to nominate 2 more people, and it ended up being Amy and Will. This is something that ends up pissing off the house, mostly because Amy is really a likable figure on one side of the house with Rachel and Ashley, and Will is really liked by the other side of the house. I just think this was a dumb move by Jimmy, because I think Amy was a potential locked number for him, especially if he keeps her off the block. And this is something that pisses off a lot of people that he's close with, namely Morgan and Mickey. Jimmy did not talk to Morgan and Mickey. They're Triple Threat Alliance members, and Jimmy is losing allies because he ends up playing the safe move. I was a little shocked that Mickey and Morgan were this upset at him playing such a safe game. I would be a little bit curious to know who their target would have been, or who they would have preferred. They were really perturbed, and this really hurt Jimmy's game going forward, I do believe. Coming in at number 2 and going up 5 spots, I have Mickey. Obviously, Mickey gets the secret head of household household power this week. I think Mickey is also somebody like Ava who has pretty solid one-on-one connections with just about everybody in the house, and I don't think is somebody who is going to be actively targeted. And I think she is one of the better strategic thinkers. I think out of the two of Mickey and Morgan, I do think that she is a better strategist just because I think she is more level-headed. Look out for Mickey. I do think that she is somebody who can win this game. It's pretty close between her and Ava for that number 2 spot. I'm also a little bit down on Mickey as well. I didn't like how paranoid she was the entire time that she found out that Lauren was the head of household. She was really going to use that power when I don't think Mickey was even close to being on her radar. And I think that just kind of shows how not great of a read Mickey had on the house. Lauren was always going to make a conservative, boring move. I don't think this bodes well for Mickey for later down the line because she is going to be paranoid a lot. This just gave me the vibe that she is going to kind of always be skeptical, and I think she kind of falls in the same boat as Morgan in that way. Jimmy didn't talk to him very much, and that hurt their feelings, and now they're all anti-Jimmy. If Rachel continues to check in with those two, because it seems like both of them are getting closer with Rachel is going to be in much better favor with them. But Mickey seems like a paranoid player to me, and seems like she is going to kind of take everything a little bit personally here, and is going to be a little worried when certain things happen. I didn't like how paranoid she was during Lauren's head of household here. I also thought it was funny because when she checked in with Lauren about what her nominations would be, Mickey said that she would honor the past HOH because the nominations didn't go through. She hated those nominations, and she hated that Jimmy didn't talk to her. And I thought that was hilarious because she's lying right to Lauren's face. It's also not good for Lauren because Mickey, who I do still think is one of the more bigger front runners in the game, is lying straight to your face. Mickey just overall paranoid, and I don't think I would have her as my second ranked player anymore just based on how paranoid she is. I have Mickey. I do like her game, but some of her characteristics this week have kind of shown to me that she may not be this elite ball knower that I had thought she was at the beginning of the game. She has now distrust with Jimmy, with Morgan, who is her final 2. Of all people to share your distrust with about your former final 2 member in Morgan, you go and tell Adrian, and I didn't even know Mickey and Adrian had that kind of bond, and I don't think they did. That goes right back to Zach and right back to Morgan, so that burns a bridge there. I did watch some of the feeds last night, and it does seem like maybe Morgan and Mickey have kind of reconciled their differences a little bit, but still, that is going to be something that will be in the back of Morgan's head for a while. The problem with Mickey is she's being brought in to alliances, and I understand being at the, quote-unquote bottom of these alliances, it'll maybe make you upset, but the fact that she doesn't even really try to hide it and says things like, okay, you got your 3, but where does that leave me? You gotta kind of hide these emotions or hide these feelings that you have. There's just some things that you have to keep to yourself in order to propel your game forward, and she doesn't really do a good job of that, in my opinion. She's a little bit more emotional than I had thought previously, and again, definitely a lot more paranoid. I do like Mickey a little bit out of the players that are in the house. I do think she is one of the people that has the better baseline knowledge of what it takes to win and what it takes to play Big Brother. Let's just talk about the whole Riley of it all, right? So Riley wins the head of household. That is no surprise. When I first recorded my player rankings, I recorded it with the impression that Riley was the head of household. And the reason that I did that, right, was because the show doesn't portray this, but everybody on the live feeds was so sold that Mickey was the person behind this power. It wasn't just Zach. There were other people going around saying that Mickey was the person behind this third mystery power. So I was rather convinced that even if Riley doesn't sniff this out, that there will be some players in his ear like Vince, Zach, that were going to tell him, or like Lauren even, that were going to tell him, hey, don't listen to these people. Like, it is Mickey. It is 100% Mickey. So yes, eventually Mickey does dethrone Riley, and Riley gets pretty upset about this to the point where Mickey actually starts to feel pretty empathetic about it. Mickey says, I don't want us to have any beef. I don't want us to have any problems. And I also don't want to put Catherine on the block. So I want to put you on the block instead. She's really doing a good job here by knowing how to talk to Riley, practically saying, I don't want to put Catherine up. The only way that I can put a third nominee up is if I put you up. She's also pitching the fact that, you need to help me get Keanu out. And Keanu is somebody who is one of the few people I think that is truly loyal and a true number to Riley. But just in that conversation and in that instant, Riley flips a switch and just decides, all right, yeah, fuck Keanu. And I will go on the block for you, Mickey, and I will help you take Keanu out for you as long as you don't put my girl on the block. She also manages to get Riley to promise to not use the veto because Catherine could end up being a replacement nominee. All of that is just so crazy. These are the dumbest people, maybe not ever, but it's close. I mean, you're talking Big Brother 19, 21, 9, 15. Like, it's something about these odd numbered seasons. Like, Big Brother 27's also got some dummies. So Mickey goes ahead and nominates Riley. She also nominates Kelly and Keanu. Kelly and Keanu once again are on the block. Mickey going after Keanu makes sense, and her trying to gain favor, though in a weird way that only I think would work with Riley in this scenario. I do think she burns Kelly, and she burns Kelly a lot here. Before she makes these nominations, she actually promises Kelly safety. After, the light bulb struck in Mickey's head, she goes back to Kelly and says, hey, I got to put you on the block. And this crushes Kelly, who's having kind of a rough go of it right now. I get the game move, I do, but it just sucks. The weirdest thing, when Mickey was promising Kelly safety, the whole deal was, if you win the veto, you can't use it. And not only does Mickey put Kelly on the block, but she still expects Kelly to hold up that end of the deal, despite her not holding up her end of the deal. And that's why I say things like, even the top end of these players aren't that great, because they still think things and they still have reasons like this. After every passing week, I think to myself, there's no possible way that anybody could top how bad the last week's HOH did. And every week, somehow in that Big Brother 27 house, it continues to get done. Every single week. After Vince's head of household the first week of the season, I thought there's no way anybody could have a worse HOH than Vince. And then Jimmy had a worse HOH than Vince. And then Lauren has a worse HOH than Jimmy. And I thought there's no possible way anybody can be worse than Lauren. And somehow, some way, Mickey, who has been portrayed and does seem like she's one of the more competent players on the board, comes out and has arguably the worst head of household of the season after stealing it from Riley, and she ends up sending home one of her top allies that I don't think was ever gonna target her. Jimmy was my preseason winner pick and was somebody who I had at number 3 in my player rankings last week after Mickey took over Riley's head of household. I did not think that he was going to be targeted, but some random Keanu get in the heads, some Vince pandering, and I think just a head of household that Jimmy had that for some reason left Mickey and Morgan feeling scorned for weeks was Jimmy's downfall. But to be fair, Mickey and Morgan never let him know that that was something that upset them. So it was just kind of a petty week and a petty reason to send home somebody that I think is super pro you. Mickey did not even consider taking a shot at Vince, especially as the week progressed with how they make this final four with Vince and Zach, with her and Morgan. And she tells Morgan to her face, like, this final four can't go long term because Vince and Zach like you more. It's like you realize this and you know what's good for your game. And I think Vince, no doubt, was the better play for her. Mickey had this on her mind, I think, since the Amy vote and has not let this go. So I think she's always wanted to target Jimmy. And although the show is kind of giving you the edit, Vince is the one that's pulling the strings and is the one that's playing the most competent game. He's much like everybody else. He's not playing that great of a game. He wasn't the one that really persuaded Mickey to not go after him. This was all her doing and all in her own head. When it came down to the eviction episode, we kind of got to hear everybody's take on Mickey's decision to replace Keanu with Jimmy. And a lot of people, especially her own people, were more shocked than anything. It ends up leaving a bitter taste in people like Ashley's mouth. Same thing with the likes of Rachel. I think Kelly has a bad taste in her mouth for Mickey. She does make a lot of enemies, but this was one of the more hilarious eviction episodes that I've seen. Coming in at number 5, going down one spot, I have Mickey, this last week's head of household. It is kind of crazy that she is not in the next boot tier after how bad that head of household was. I think Mickey still has a somewhat good relationship with Will, and I think Will, if he's smart, will tell Ava, don't put Mickey up, let somebody else take that shot. Mickey kind of got lucky with who ends up winning this head of household, because I think she ends up having bigger fish to fry. I think if somebody like Rachel wins this head of household, there is a chance that she could have got blinded by how Mickey did Jimmy and maybe got off of the Vince train and more so targeted Mickey. And she's a pretty good social player, so she kind of insulates herself again and does a good job socially. I do think that she can kind of meld back in with the group and do a good job that way. Ava, I do gotta say, it is funny to watch Mickey spiral so hard and especially overplay her hand so hard. She has been going hard all week and she has been flip-flopping all week. And the fact that she has been going so hard to not get Ashley to hit the block, especially after A voted against her and B has been lying to her, and Mickey and Morgan, who are two people that are supposed to be close to each other, Mickey's also talking trash about her and she's also trying to go to bat for her to keep her safe. And it's like, Mickey, I mean, you are playing the middle to a toxic degree where I think you're trying to keep people who have shown that they do not have your best interest at heart. It's just like when they're giving Vince the mastermind edit, the fact that they're giving Mickey this mastermind edit when she is playing clearly so sloppy on the feeds is just very funny to me, because I think by this time in any traditional Big Brother season, I think there is kind of a clear mastermind and there just isn't anybody like that this season. So when there's like an inch of some gameplay, they're going to drag it a mile. And I think that's what they're doing with Mickey this week. But don't get it twisted. She is flip-flopping all over the place. I think it's crazy that she would want to keep Ashley, and the fact that she's working with Ashley, especially after she doesn't vote for her in her favor. And I don't think she is super true to her overall. I think she's more true to Will, and I think she's more true to Rachel. And I don't think Rachel necessarily wants to work with Mickey either. The house perception of her is not the best. They all still think she's a floater, and the fact that she came in and said not going to be doing one-on-ones when she won her head of household, and she's only talking to Will and Mickey, I think gives everybody the impression that Mickey is controlling the head of household. So I think that they are more targeting Mickey than they are targeting Ava. A good chunk of these players don't believe that Ava made this move individually. They believe that Mickey is the person behind this move. So I do believe whoever stays kind of in that group of Vince, Zach, and Morgan, I think they are going to be targeting Mickey. Even though Zach originally thought that kind of Rachel was behind it, I do think that Mickey has jumped Rachel in the target order. Coming in at dead last, at number 12, going down 7 spots, I have Mickey. I honestly do believe Mickey is going to make herself the target by the end of the week, because I just think after being on this power trip, I do not think she's going to handle it well after being put on the block by somebody who she was trying to get the whole house to actively target last week during a week where she wasn't even head of household. And I think that that's going to get back to Rachel. On Wednesday's episode, Mickey said that she didn't want Vince or Zach up, which is crazy because she was pitching both of them. And it's like, you can't play both sides and also lie to the audience. Morgan tells you some information about Ava, and she goes up to Ava and tells her, hey, just so you know, Morgan, she has your name in her mouth right now. If that is your number one, right, and if that final four is who you claim to be working with, why on earth are you pitching Morgan to Ava? It makes absolutely no sense. The gameplay makes no sense. The fact that she is walking around acting like she is one of the most dominant players in the house is mind-blowing to me. But she is definitely one of the most active players, probably the most active player. Just because she's active doesn't mean she's good. And in fact, the fact that she is so active among a cast of so many passive players makes her that much more of a bad player. The fact that she goes up to Ava and tells her this about Morgan and almost gets Morgan on the block is terrible. If she was a good game player, she would have had Will go up to Ava and tell her this, and would have accomplished ultimately what you would have wanted, and that is to put Morgan on the mind of Ava as head of household. Otherwise, why else would you say this? You say that you did not want this to happen. What am I doing? What is this? That had to have been what you were doing. Have Will do it. Mickey and Morgan are also both so bad about openly talking about jury and who they want on the jury. Two people who they say, I want you in jury, and Morgan got into a fight with Rachel about this, the only fight in the history of Rachel Riley's career that she's ever won. Mickey is even worse with this because Morgan, is going around talking about jury and telling people who she wants on jury, but Mickey is talking about final twos with people that she's not even in the final two with. And before the vote, her candidly telling Ashley that she feels like that she can control the vote and that she's got to do what's best for her game and not considering what's best for Ashley's game when you're having a conversation with her at that moment is absolutely bananas. And Ashley calls her out on this, which I thought was smart. And Mickey, you may think you have Ashley here, but you do not have Ashley. Ashley is more Team Rachel. Coming in at number 10 and going up 2 spots, I have Mickey, the Mictator. Now, Mickey has rubbed people the wrong way a lot in the last 2 weeks, and she did not handle her time on the block well. Once she gets to the end, if she does get there, I think a lot of people are going to compare notes, and I think they're already comparing notes within the house right now of stuff that she has said about her fellow house guests, and I think they're going to say, man, this is a mean lady, and I do not want to give her $750,000. She has done things, I think, that in theory are good for her game. She just needs to go about them in a different way where it doesn't seem like she is putting herself before she is showing that she is actively listening. She is without a doubt one of the most selfish players in the game, and this is a house that is pretty much 50-50 between players that are extremely passive and players that are extremely self-interested, and Mickey is probably the most self-interested. For example, her going up to Rachel and telling her that Kelly told her that she is icing her out, and Rachel wanting to get to the bottom of this, but Mickey said, oh, don't say that because then Kelly won't feel like she can tell me things. Like, that is her playing self-interested, her wanting to play both sides just out in the open too, not even wanting to hide that from Rachel. Like asking Lauren to throw the power of veto during the OTEV competition when Lauren is going to be the replacement nominee is crazy. I do think it is impressive that she was able to not only have Ashley feel bad for her, but have Rachel, I think she was actually considering using the veto on Mickey to make amends with her. But by the week's end, if she was on the block, she would have got blindsided. So Mickey, really an aggressive player, has not had the best road so far. If she just was able to hide how self-interested she is, I do think she would be in a much better position. But that just has not been possible for the Mictator. So she does go up 2 spots from where she was last week, but I still don't think there's any way that she will win. And I do think that she is a potential nominee this week, and she could be the next boot as well. Has there ever been 2 players that haven't lived up to their potential more than Vince and Mickey? And isn't it ironic that they're both on the same season and they're both going after each other without openly admitting that they're both going after each other? Mickey, who should be one of the most socially dominant players on this season, always live on the edge every single chance they get. You know, we'll talk a little bit here about Mickey, who after Riley gets voted out, she is crying up a storm. And we've talked about it with Vince, where Mickey is somebody who socially should be dominating this game, but you just had your best friend on the block and you're over here crying to people like Ashley and Will, who know that not only were you threatened by Riley not too long ago and stole his head of household, and know that you're number one, who you, at least in the past, have and will pick over the likes of Will and Ashley, were on the block, so you're never going to vote her out. And she said that she got rid of someone who had never put her up, and I think that is the most crazy thing to ever say, because it is almost guaranteed that Riley would have put you up. Did you forget that you took his head of household away not that long ago? He would have definitely put you up. Mickey, the longer that she sticks around, the more and more she gains house pariah status. Now, this veto result puts a hindrance on Vince's HOH because his cowardness rings again. This head of household is going to be a bad one because I don't think Vince isn't going to be getting out any of his targets, especially after somebody who he thought was a consensus house target in Mickey ends up winning the power of veto. And that is the absolute worst case scenario for Vince, because now Vince is forced to potentially make a big move and put Rachel on the block. And I don't think he's going to do it. Starting off with number 10, not going up or down any spots, we have Mickey. I think there is a very good chance that Mickey returns to the block this week for, I believe, the third week in a row. And she continues to be shocked that she is on the block. She thinks that it's because she's playing this great, fantastic game that everybody is catching on to, when in fact it's because she is leaking information, she is lying all the time, and everybody knows and everybody is aware of the shady game that she is playing. And it is just amazing that she has not caught on to this. This might be one week where she's not that surprised that she goes on the block, because I think she would know that Keanu is somebody that would be actively targeting her, because I don't think she has made it much of a secret that she would also target Keanu. But her overall thinking that she still has everybody that she thinks she has, like the Wills and the Ashleys and the Rachels, is just absolutely delusional. And I think there's a good chance that her ego could be boosted even more this week, because even though I have her at number 10, I don't necessarily think that she is the next boot, and we'll talk about that. Her and Morgan are up there with Keanu in terms of who has the worst reads in the house. And we've explained this over and over, how her and Vince are two players who really on paper should be playing a way, way better game. Very underwhelmed with Mickey's game. That's not to say she's not a great character. She's a perfect villain for this season, and I do enjoy her for that. But as far as just a pure Big Brother player, she is not good. It's amazing throughout everything that Mickey never lost confidence in her game, even until the very end. Her shocked face at her eviction made my entire week, and the fact that she was so shocked was a perfect microcosm of how her game went, and really how the entire Big Brother 27 game as a whole has played out. Now, with Mickey and Vince both on the block, I think both of those players would have been great evictees for the last pre-juror spot. Mickey said it best. Vince was the only person to vote for Mickey to stay. And I've listened to people talk about it. I've seen takes on the internet, and people still do not know why Vince voted for Mickey to stay. He did swear on the Bible, of all things, that he would keep Mickey, but we've seen Vince's gameplay. We've seen that slime ball. He doesn't really care about that kind of thing. When Mickey learned about this information, she said that she was shocked, but then wasn't shocked, because her and Vinny are so similar. Oh, you mean similar as in the two most disappointing players in the show? Two players that completely tanked their games, and two players that we have discussed all season long that should have been the most dominant in the house but didn't live up to that potential. That's how you guys are similar? She doesn't see that, but I thought that was funny, because it is true. They are similar in that aspect. But like I said, she was shocked when the votes were read, and she actually, when she was talking to Julie, this was probably the best post-evictee interview so far this season. It was mostly because Mickey just said crazy things, and she also brought up the melting pot alliance with her, Morgan, and Vince, which I thought had been dead, but I guess to Mickey, she thought that that was still a thing, and she thought that she could count on them. She also said that they told her to throw the Big Brother Blockbuster competition to Vince, and if that's true, that is hilarious. And if she bought into that, that's even more hilarious. I don't think that she did throw this competition, because I think this would be a hard competition to throw. You can't really see what's going on with each player in this competition, so I think it would be a hard comp to throw. The fact that that Weasel and Morgan were going to her and saying, hey, you're going to be safe no matter what, just throw it to me, please, throw me a bone, I'm going to go home, don't make me go home, and he ends up winning. They're just an ultimate weasel move and is just so hilarious to me. But he still ended up voting to keep her, so, what can you say? I don't think it was on purpose, though, for Vince. And this blindside also resulted in the quickest walkout of the season. A lot of these people that have been evicted so far, they've had long walkouts. Julie's had to tell them to hurry up and get out there. They've done a lot of hugs. Not Mickey. She just stole the Bible, had a shocked look on her face, and got out the front door. And honestly, wish more players did it like that. And the other crazy thing about Vinny's vote was if Mickey had opened her eyes and had saw the house for what it was and she wasn't so delusional, she would have seen that Vince was the only one that actually guaranteed her vote. And she was not willing to return the favor. Her Melting Pot Alliance member. She was not willing to return the favor. And that was hilarious and crazy. And at the time, I thought he was lying. I thought that was even crazier that she was like, oh, it's a good thing I have Vince's vote. And, now I feel even better about Vince. She was worried that if she voted to keep Vince, she was going to piss a lot of people off. But the people that she was going to piss off in the long run was actually going to turn into the minority, and they're not very good at competition. And coming in at number 5, topping the list of I See the Wheels Turning, I have Mickey. Mickey seems like somebody who really has the eyes on the prize. She really talked about 2 types of personality traits that I think are going to carry her game, and is something that I think anybody that is playing the game, that if they have these traits, I think are really good for their game. She talked about being intentional and charm. She did come across as a charming player and as a charming person. So if she uses that charm and that intentionality to the best of her advantage, I do think Mickey is somebody to keep an eye on and is a potential winners candidate. I mean, she's on top of this list for a reason. The house guests were split up into groups of 8 to essentially win a power. Zach ends up winning his competition and wins $10,000. And the discrepancy between these two wins here, Zach winning $10,000 and Jimmy essentially being punished is very, very wild. I don't really know what production was thinking they would get out of this. Zach gets called into the DR, and we figure out that not only did he get $10,000 from winning the last competition, but it comes with a twist. Zach's $10K can get him off the block until jury. He can buy his way off the block. So his $10,000 will go to whoever the head of household is that week, and it is good up until the veto ceremony. So he will be able to get himself off the block. His $10,000 will go to the head of household, and he will be guaranteed safety, and he can use this up until the jury portion of the game. However, I don't think Zach is going to need to use this. I do think that Zach is perhaps one of the most well-positioned players in the game right now. He might get to keep his $10,000. And then after Will gets chosen, he picks Zach. Now, Will wants to work with Zach. People like Zach, the men like Zach, the women like Zach. He could be a threat moving forward. And Zach wanted to pick Lauren, he said, but ends up picking Ava because Ava at the very last second puts her hands up, and Zach says he just gave him the saddest puppy dog eyes, and that is what sealed the deal for Ava. So Ava, Zach, Will, and Rachel, all 4 have-nots this week, but all 4 are also safe as well. And not only did Keanu pitch Jimmy, but who ends up going to tell him that is Zach. And Zach has been a little bit of a shit stirrer, as he also went up to Ashley and told her that everybody is kind of talking shit about you for taking this long shower. Zach right now is kind of playing the middle almost perfectly, because I look at this house and I look at Jimmy and Ashley kind of on opposite sides of the house. I think they both kind of want to go after each other right now. And Zach, I think, can kind of chameleon in either side of these groups. Good on Zach for telling him that, but I don't know how long this charade can work, but it's very interesting how well Zach is playing this game. When Zach ends up leaving the house, Zach took it really, really hard. That guy was emotional. And coming in at number 1, I have Zach because of how well he is liked, because of all the alliances that he is getting thrown into, and him being more than capable of winning competitions. Him having that $10,000 veto. You let Zach go far, you let him get to, like, say, final 7, final 6. He's a guy that could go on like a jag run and kind of win out. It might be a little bit too obvious, and it may be the even more obvious answer that it is Rachel. I don't think it's going to be Vince or Zach when Jimmy is having these big conversations with the women. Vince and Zach are also in the head of household having these conversations conversations with them. I don't think either one of them are going to be on the block. I had Vince and Zach on here as two guys that potentially I have as a stock up because I like the fact that they are in these conversations still with the women, even though they are two powerful guys on, the men's side of the house. But those two vetoes are won by either Kelly or Keanu. I do think Vince and Zach are two players that kind of become targets. It's going to be interesting to see how those vetoes plan out. Maybe none of them get one, and it doesn't matter at the end of the day, and Keanu or Kelly are going to be the next people out the door. Coming in at number 6, we have Zach. For no real huge reason did I drop Zach out of my number 1 spot all the way here to number 6. It's more because of the players above him I feel a little bit better than. I think Zach is somebody who is slowly getting the big brother game and does have some lapses. But he is somebody who, although being, physically somebody who is maybe a little bit on the intimidating side, is somebody who is well connected and is somebody who has a lot of friends. Once these numbers get slimmer, I think people will obviously start to see how big Zach's threat level could be. They really wanted this to be Will's time to go up until I believe it was maybe Thursday night. Out of everybody in the house that Zach and Vince tried to convince to be a 7th vote, so their number 1, their main girl, their main squeeze, Lauren, didn't have to break the tie. They tried to convince Ava. This shows that Vince and Zach really don't have a good grasp on the house dynamics here because Ava is a ride or die for Will. Ava's never going to vote Will out of this house. She tells them, look, this is not going to work, and it shouldn't work for you guys either. This is how this works. This is how that works, yada, yada, yada. And she is basically the main reason why Zach and Vince don't end up voting for Adrian to stay. Granted, I do think that they didn't want Lauren to break a tie, but a lot of it had to do with Ava putting in the work to make sure that she protected her ally this week. The problem with people like Vince and Zach and Lauren as well, as you saw with our head of household this week, they are not going to show their cards, and they are afraid of people getting mad at them and their position blowing back at them. The fact of the matter is, this is week 3 of the game. There are no secrets of where you guys are positioned, at least for the most part. The fact that you let all this intimidation scare you from what you wanted to do or what is best for your game is just ridiculous. I can't believe how passive this cast is and how scared they are to make any sort of move. That's a side of the house that is going to crumble because they want to be close with everybody. And that's the problem, is you can't have your cake and eat it too, because the Jimmys, the Rachels, the Mickeys, the Ashleys, the Morgans, they're all going to stab you in the back, and they're all going to make a move because they know what's best for their game and how to move forward. And coming in at number 2, I have Zach going up 4 spots. Although Zach is one of the spineless people like Vince who did not vote for this tie, everybody loves Zach. Even the women who should be targeting him, they're all so infatuated with this man. They're like, oh, but we can keep Zach around because I may have a chance with him. Even Ashley, who he hates, thinks, oh, I may have a chance with Zach. I could get with Zach. So, let's keep him around. And that is very beneficial to his game. And I think the second that Vince leaves, it opens the game up for him, and he actually gets a little bit stronger position-wise. He's somebody who can win a competition. He's gathering and he's getting the game more and more. He leaked the information to Morgan about how Adrian told him about the Mickey scenario, and that is what I like to see from him. It shows that he is getting how to play this game more and more each week. I don't know. Is it too obvious that Zach's the winner? It may be too obvious that Zach's the winner. And in a surprising twist here, Zach decides to do a 360 and just tell him that he thinks it's Ashley because he thinks that if Mickey is head of household, it's better for his game. And this right here is a solid move from Zach. And having that read is good for him. I don't think Riley would have targeted him, but I understand why there was skepticism there. So I think this was a good move for him because at least he 100% knows what Mickey is doing, and it is the boring move and the boring route, which is still trying to get Keanu out of the house. Stock up option for me, as well as Zach. Zach being able to consistently go with each side and to not be a target and not really be talked about by anybody as a target has continuously impressed me. Still has that power to protect himself. Him siding with the women this go around, I think, showed that he understands positioning. The nominations were Zach, Vince, and Keanu, but there were a good chunk of things that happened on the live feeds. These nominations really pissed off Zach. Ava says that she's not going to be doing any one-on-ones, but Zach took it upon upon himself to go up there and kind of be like, why would you put me up? I'm never going after you. And Ava really not giving Zach what he wanted. She would talk to him and she would stare at the ground and be like, well, Zach, I just didn't think you trusted me. It's fine if you didn't trust me, honestly, and you can even put me up. It's kind of crazy to me that Zach and Vince are two players that are ultimately disrespecting Ava's gameplay, saying that she couldn't have came up with this by herself. She's a nothing player. She doesn't deserve to put up players like us, when Ava not only put them on the block, but just a couple of weeks ago talked them out of doing a vote that was in their best interest to do. Ava is actively playing a better game than Zach and Vince. Don't get it twisted. She may sleep all day, but as of right now, she is playing a better game than both Zach and Vince. History is always doomed to repeat itself. And Zach, much like Marcellus, will be thinking about how he should have used his veto every night for the rest of his life. Zach's move of not using his secret veto now joins Marcellus and a couple of others on the Mount Rushmore of worst Big Brother moves after he got evicted on Thursday by a vote of 8-2 next to Vince. Now, before we dive into this, I want to take back everything that I have said about how Zach is a potential winner and how Zach is slowly but surely getting the game. I really thought that he had it easy, and I think the thing that's going to make it hard for Zach to sleep at night, if he uses this power, he is well integrated, and I think Zach has a chance to potentially win the game. All you have to do is use that veto, and it is one of the most easy decisions. Is using that veto to take yourself off is almost like breathing. It should be second nature. It should be something that just happens. It shouldn't be something where you're agonizing over it, because even if that is the case, I would argue your close allies, they're gonna think to themselves, if I was in his shoes, I would definitely use this on myself, and I can't even fault him for that. What would you have done later on in the season if, say, you, Morgan, and Lauren were on the block and you won a veto? Would you have used it on Morgan or Lauren? Let's call a spade here. You aren't this selfless player that didn't want to use it because you didn't want to get your girl Morgan on the block. You didn't use it because you couldn't fathom giving Ava, who you don't respect, $10,000. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. If you make it to jury, your stipend is going to be close to $10,000. And I think Zach easily makes it to the jury phase of the game. It's a win-win for him, or at least a net neutral for him. He just didn't want to give Ava any more money. So congratulations, Zach. You probably will get a social media following, and you probably will be remembered in the show's lore forever. But it won't be for the reason that you want it to be. You are going to be remembered as one of the dumbest players in the history of the show, when you had a real chance to go deep in this thing, but you didn't, because you didn't want to give the flower girl $10,000. When Zach finally did get evicted, the house was mourning this man, and I haven't seen a house mourn an evicted house guest like that since Jesse Goddard was evicted in BB11, I believe. And they were giving him long hugs and then gave a speech. I think this may be the reason why we don't get head of households that end on Thursday. I think that was the longest walkout this season. We've had a couple long ones. I thought it was so funny because, he had to hug Lauren for 30 seconds. He had to hug Morgan for 30 seconds. He had to tell Vince how much he cared about him while Vince was in the egg suit sobbing. We talked about how he told Morgan that he had the power. He also got convinced by Morgan to tell Mickey, and that ends up being the worst part of his week and what ultimately sends him home. He should have never told Mickey, because now that gives the house even more incentive to vote him out, knowing that he has a power. I couldn't believe just the stretch of idiotic plays made by Zach here this week. Absolute fumble at the 1 yard line that was picked up and returned 99 yards for a touchdown for the opposition. Zach, you are terrible at this game, and welcome to the Hall of Fame of terrible moves in Big Brother history. Coming in at number 8 and the second to bottom player in this list, I have Zach. I think he knows the kind of game that he will play. He knows people will show their cards early, and he explained it well, and he explained kind of what to do to expose that and how he will use that for his advantage. And he was another dude, like pretty much all of these guys claimed he was the complete package. He had the social, he had the physical, he had the strategical, he literally had everything. Zach is the complete package. We should all just go home and give him the $750,000. He does seem like he's going to go balls to the wall and could be a key piece to an alliance. He knows he's going to be perceived as a threat and does want to instead push the fact that he is a pastor's son, which is all fine and good, but he also said during this interview that he is not going to lie about being a former professional baseball player, which seems kind of of silly. If you're trying to downplay that physical threat, I really don't think you should say you were a professional baseball player. You should say that you work for the ministry or something. I don't know. I don't do church. I don't know if that's a real thing, but I think you should really completely commit to that bit. He also said hopefully there's going to be basically a consensus target for week 1, like an Angela, which I thought was hilarious because Angela didn't get kicked out. She went pretty deep and kicked out a guy that kind of looked like Zach. So, hopefully you're not the guy that goes home, Zach. He wants a secret final 2 and kind of wants a lot of alliances, and he knows that that's going to be a risky game, but he feels like he has the strategic wherewithal to kind of navigate that. And he also said that he wants to play like a mashup of Chelsea, McKenzie, and Tucker. Give me just the 3 best players from last year. Slam them all together. Give it to me. I really think this is a guy that could win the game if the stack favors him. He doesn't seem like somebody who's afraid to take risks, but there are some things that he said that makes me think that he could make dumb decisions as well. So I think having him right in the middle of the pack is where Zach should be.